today. We have one of our own. So I'm in Melbourne. Shane is in Queensland. They're heading the Queensland team, Ask a Queensland team with Isabella. So we've had Shane before. We had the World Sickle Cell Day where I shared part of his story. But I'm excited today that he's sharing not everything, but just most of his life journey living with sickle cell disease. So I'll give you the floor, Shane. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Agnes. Firstly, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's a real honor because I'm someone who's pretty private. I'm very selective with what I share, and for me to whatever comes out tonight, it's a bit of a step. As you mentioned, I had shared part of my journey several weeks ago in another meeting. However, that was just sort of a bit of a condensed overview, I guess. But this is, like today, I was just thinking, okay, what do I say? How do I do this? And the support that I've received from family, friends, like my amazing work colleagues, just really, really inspired me and touched me. So I'm kind of pumped in a different way. Yeah.
No, I'm honored, to be honest. For you, I know we've connected maybe 2-3 years now, and we lost touch a little bit. I was worried, like, are you okay? Are you okay? And it's really, really, for me, it's a huge honor that you can actually accept to, these things are sensitive. I get it. These things are sensitive. Who wants to, put their life out there? But for me, I decided to do that now almost 7 years ago because it was a sense of healing, just that's the way I feel. And every person has a point in time where they feel they are ready. And I'm glad, it's your time now to share and to inspire, actually. For me, it's not so much sharing, but it's inspiring others, especially because sickle cell is considered to be one of those conditions where people shy away, a lot of stigma, especially some parts of the world where talking about it is really, really stigma. And once you open up, then you open yourself to criticism or to, other things. Other people also might be told off for something at work, but I'm just, it's really a huge honor. So anyway, to begin with, why don't you tell our viewers what you do and what you're specialized in before we go into the detailed question of a bit of a personal question. So who's Shane?
Who's Shane? Okay, that is a full-on question. Try and keep it very brief, but Shane is a 40-year-old guy living in Queensland, Gold Coast at the moment. We are, we're all in the middle of a pandemic. Shane, I love music, playing keyboard and piano, reading. I love tech, and as frustrating as it is when technology doesn't work, I still love it. I love learning. That's my thing. Like, I love absorbing knowledge. I think that's a big thing for me. And I currently work at a primary school in northern New South Wales, and in an admin IT role. And it's wonderful. It has its challenges as well, as I mentioned, with technology, when it works, when it doesn't work. But that's a part of my life. All of that's essentially a snapshot of who I am. Sickle cell.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I'm always looking for IT questions. We went around asking, like, what are we going to do for our conference? This platforms, can you help me? So thank you so much for all the help you're giving us and supporting the ASCA team in Queensland. So what, to begin with, I just like sort of have an idea. And as I said, this is just something that you've grown up with. No scripted questions, just if you remember anything. For example, let's talk about your parents and your siblings. Did your parents know that they have the sickle cell trait, or did they know anything about sickle cell disease at all?
Not at all. They didn't know anything about sickle cell or the fact that there were carriers until well after I was born. I was diagnosed, it was after 4.5 or 5 years old, actually. I have a younger brother who was born 4.5 years or so after myself, and around that time leading up to his birth, there were so many complications with my own journey. I was basically tested, and there was our GP at the time had no idea. In fact, this is Melbourne in the 80s. So I was born in.
So you were born in Melbourne?
Yeah, that's right. So I was born in Melbourne, and at that time, there was just not enough information about it. So my parents essentially took myself to the Royal Children's, and we got tested there, and that's when everything happened. That's when life changed.
And that was the old Royal Children's, eh?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So that was like a second home, to be honest. Till I was about 12 or 13 years old, and that was pretty phenomenal in the sense that treatment, reviews, dealing with sickle cell crises. Yeah, it was full on. My parents still live about 40 minutes or so away from the city. So it was a daily trip, and with crises and checkups and all of that. I used to be admitted in hospital 12, 15, at least times a year. And that phase of life, there were so many sort of events that had happened leading up to what my current treatment is, which is regular exchange transfusions. I had my spleen gallbladder removed. I had a cardiac arrest, died, had everything done, experienced quite a lot at that in that time frame. So from my parents to go through that, it was just never ending, essentially. Just a lot of traveling, a lot of driving, a lot of sitting in waiting rooms, a lot of massive lessons in patience, and coming to terms with what I guess from their perspective their eldest child has. How do you deal with that? What is this illness? Okay, well, we're carriers. What does that mean? Do we get our family members tested? What's the situation? What's the deal? So there were a lot of questions, but the thing was, Agnes, there probably wasn't enough time to stop and pause and breathe, really, for the first 10 years or so. It was really, really full on.
It is full on. And I don't know how, if they've told you, how were you diagnosed? What sort of symptoms did you portray?
My earliest, from what I remember, was just pain, just a lot of pain. From what Mum explained to me, I had a lot of pain in my lower back growing up in the first few years. So I wasn't able to sit up properly, for example. And which meant that I would have had a lot of crises and attacks in the lower back region of my body. And they noticed that I had constant fevers, I was crying a lot. So, probably didn't give them an opportunity to rest or sleep much. It was just ongoing. And, at that time, our GP, or GPs rather, they didn't know what sickle cell anemia was. So they were treating it accordingly, treating joint pains. I had a lot of joint pains growing up, and with crises still do. So that was one of the factors that they knew, okay, well, Shane's got, his knees are swollen, or his elbows are painful, or his lower back or shoulders. So there was, thoughts or discussions of this is related to just joint pains or something like that. But it wasn't until that diagnosis was made that, things just swung into action, and it just went next level.
I can imagine that was in the 80s, that was in the 80s. That was a long time ago. And my daughter was born in the 2000s. Even then, it was like try and error for the doctors. It was really try and error. And I can't be surprised that it took almost 4 years for the doctors to actually find out. My only I don't know, there's a consolation to say, I'm glad that nothing huge happened like an acute chest syndrome. Because by the time you are 4, you know, because my daughter, the first 2 years, she had the worst acute chest syndrome, you know. We just thank God that nothing that huge, massive, complication that, you know, in most African settings, children are dying because mostly of the acute chest syndrome. So how's life like going to school and just experiencing this unknown, in inverted commas, condition in Australia? How were your friends, your teachers? Did they understand what you are going through?
Somewhat. I think it was it required a degree of educating, if I can say that, because with school, especially grade 1, grade 2, my absences were, I was in hospital every month. I had a crisis at least once a month on average. And I had like a major crisis when I was about, grade 1. And then grade 2, I was around 7 or 8. Another major crisis, and that's, when I had my cardiac arrest and everything. I went back to school a few weeks after that and just, went back to playing footy. It was like growing up, especially in primary school, a cycle of you go to school, feeling, you get like symptomatic, pain, whatnot, go to hospital, have a crisis, having a crisis, sorry, go to hospital, get treated, recover, come home, rest, recover, go back to school, rinse and repeat. And times that by 15 or so a year, every year. So that was
did the school understand? Like, did your parents tell your teachers, like, I don't know, then now, like Anthea, gave us like a care plan. Did the teachers know why you were missing school, and did they understand what was going on?
Most of my teachers were very, very understanding. In fact, the support I had from my school, from my primary school, I think having your primary school down the road from where you live is a massive advantage, because it was just a 5-minute walk down the road. Some of my teachers, like, they went above and beyond. My year 6 teacher, Mr. K, he would literally bring home every week. Like, if I'm home from hospital and I'm recovering, he just like come home once a week and give me all my work and go through it with me. We had support from the school as well, in terms of from the education department. Just we had teachers come home and so that I wouldn't fall behind. And this is like when I'm recovering. So it was, that level of support was so appreciated and so valued and so important. But because that just helped with everything. Like, it helped helped keep all of us focused. And then being in school itself, there were a lot of limitations or certain things that I could or couldn't do. And it was sometimes a bit of a challenge, because I guess, I had to stay warm, for example. I couldn't go out and play if it was rainy, or not rainy, if it was like cold. With sickle cell, you have to keep your body temperature at a certain level. You can't be too hot, can't overexert.
So at what point, all that education, at what point did your parents know that, oh, these are the do's and don'ts? Or is it just, try and error, the hospitals tell you this? At what points did your teachers actually explain? I mean, your parents knew that, this is what he can do, he can be in and how kids are, even if they tell you, it's just because I know my daughter, like, don't run because your lungs are not okay. And then she comes back, she's like, I ran 2 laps today. I was like, really? So what I want to do for your friends and your co-workers watching online, let's show them what sickle cell looks like in our bodies, in case they haven't. But I'll send you some brochures, and then you can print for them so that they can sort of understand. So I have on the screen, this is on our website. So please go to our website, sicklecelladvocacy.org. And if you click on sickle cell disease on the top there, this picture comes up. So sickle cell disease in pictures, this is what happens. On the right-hand side, we have a normal red blood cell in the body. So red blood cells in the body are the transport, maybe the car, if you say so, to carry oxygen to all parts of our body. And that OX gene works with, you know, a term called hemoglobin in the body. Hemoglobin and is a genetic term. I'm not very sciencey, but it's a genetic term where all of us have got different types of hemoglobins, and it's genetic. So for people like me, I have normal hemoglobin, which is called A, and mutated hemoglobin, which is S, but I've got a recessive gene. So I've got half a gene of S and half a gene of A. So for somebody who's got normal red blood cells, so I have some of them, I'd say 70%, mine is about 70, 80%. My cells are like this. They are walking or traveling nice and, you know, smooth in the vessels. There's no traffic. Consider this as a road. There's no traffic going smoothly in the blood vessels. They carry oxygen to all parts of the body. But on the left side, for people who have sickle cell disease, so they have half the gene, they carry half the gene from the parents, the S, and half the gene from another parent. It could be S, it could be C, it could be E. There's different types of hemoglobins, the 40 ones. The most common for sickle cell disease are sickle cell disease SS, so where they take the mutated gene, the sickle cell hemoglobin S from one parent. Like for me, my daughter carried one, and she also carried one from the dad. So she had sickle cell SS. What happens for those people who have this condition, their red blood cells, they die after about 20 days. For somebody like me who has a majority of my red blood cells, because I only carry half the gene, these red blood cells take about 120 days for the new ones to come out. And these red blood cells are formed in the bone marrow. But for somebody who has sickle cell disease, these red blood cells die after about 20 days, and they break and they become into what looks like a sickle shape. A sickle is a farm tool that's usually used in farms to cut things like sugarcane or rice or whatever. So that's where the name came from. So it turns into something like a sickle, and it gets the vessels blocked. So here we have nice traffic, but here look at it as we have traffic jam. So this is what happens. So when there's traffic jam, oxygen is not going to all parts of the body, because oxygen is fuel in our body, but it also brings about a lot of pain. But all these cells can also get stuck in different parts of the body. One of the parts could be the heart, where like Shane, he had a cardiac arrest. You can also have a stroke if it goes in the brain. You can also have pneumonia, or the severe form of pneumonia if it gets stuck in the lungs. And that's what my daughter had, which is called acute chest syndrome. That's very, very, very serious and fatal in most parts of the world, especially Africa, because the treatment is not found early, and people die from this. So go to our website, learn more about sickle cell disease and how you can support us, and just be our keeper, and spread the word for people that come from different parts of the world, mostly Africa, Asia, Mediterranean, some African Americans, obviously, because of the gene from the African region, India, Greek, Italian. Spread the word so that they can get tested, and stay tuned and see how we can help you understand how we can get tested. So pretty much that's what sickle cell disease is. Go to our website, or sicklecelladvocacy.org, then you can learn more and support Shane and our organization. So sorry, Shane, I had to just explain, because I've seen there's quite a few people online watching. So now tell me, so growing up, when you went to high school, you've gone through primary school where you're sort of babied, you know, your siblings, were they very supportive, your family members? What happened there?
I think the amount of time that was spent in hospital, it's one of those things where, as I was mentioning earlier, you need that time to recover from that, I think, mentally and emotionally. And often it was a case where we were just on the go. We were just on the go, but somehow as a family unit, we managed to have breaks, to go on a holiday, but, you know, still being mindful of all those requirements, timing it between irregular treatments at the time, or trying to be mindful of where, you know,
Where
Do we
to
have
go?
exactly things like that?
The
Can anything
weather.
be
Did your
possible?
mom have the bag, the medicine bag?
It came to a point where like there was a medicine bag, but then it was just, you know, the time to pack the bag was just reduced, and it was always just, it's like in the back of your mind, you just prepared. You just have to be prepared because you don't know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. You know, it's kind of like that, you know, adrenaline, which is, it's there. And for my parents, for, you know, for my,
So the anxiety, and that's what
yeah,
they talk about, because mostly like when we have these talks, trying deliberately to bring people that come from the mental health expert, that you do have that, you're always anxious because you don't know when. You don't know when the crisis will come.
exactly. And, you know, with being in Melbourne and how erratic the climate is, it's not seasonal, but it used to be just 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. That's when crises would hit. Get ready, drive to the hospital, go, and do it all over again. Coming to, sorry, your question about high school, it was a bit easier, but at the same time, that's when a lot of things changed for me personally, because as I mentioned earlier, a massive part of our lives was at the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne. You know, it was a huge part of our lives, and we got some incredible support from there, and it was just, yeah, like I was saying, it was actually kind of like a second home, literally. But the moment I started high school, my parents made a request for my treatment to be at Monash in Melbourne, so a lot closer to home. And really, that was just because it was closer. So that took place from the time I started year 7, and yeah, that was very different because now everything was a lot closer. I had an amazing specialist and a wonderful therapy unit there. And that's when my regular treatment started. So leading up to year 7, it wasn't regular. It was just reactive almost, because my hemoglobin would fluctuate quite a lot. And it was just a lot of, at the time, very few people in Melbourne with sickle cell. Whereas in Clayton or at Monash, there was a hematology unit, but also there was a thalassemia unit. And that's where I had my regular.
But we had even then, most people, you know, closely related for sickle cell is like thalassemia, so the doctors were the same. So in terms of treatment, because I know in the 80s there was no things like hydroxyurea, that must have been hard. So what sort of treatment were you having then?
In terms of treatment, I had some transfusions, but as I was saying, it wasn't regular. It was really just to bump up my hemoglobin. I had a splenectomy, I had my gallbladder removed as well. And then since then, just been on antibiotics. I'm still on antibiotics daily. And really, that was it. Dealing with
run me through, like, how old were you when we had, let's start with the gallbladder. How old were you and what sort of symptoms did you have?
So I was 7 years old. Just started suddenly feeling tired. I was always jaundiced heavily. And when my spleen got infected, it was, that's when it just enlarged. And as you know, it's almost like poking out. So I just remember like being in hospital and my parents being told by the medical team, look, we have to operate. We have to remove your spleen. It's life or death. So, you know, you can imagine them going, okay, this is huge, right? We've got to do it, and had that done. So that was, I think, a big bit of a turning point, because it was not long after I had after the cardiac arrest and everything. But since then, there was a lot more focus on, okay, now we need more of a bubble, essentially. You know, got to have regular penicillin, folic acid.
How old were you when you had the cardiac arrest?
I was about 6. I was 6. So,
your mom, do you remember anything, or did your mom tell you like what were the symptoms? How did you feel?
I remember there's a day leading up to it. I was just playing footy at school, and then got the call from. I went and told like my teacher, I'm not feeling great. They called my parents, went home, sat on the couch, and bags ready, we're going. That was the last thing I actually remember. So I was having the crisis, and from what my mum told me, the nurse came and checked up on me. So I was admitted. My eyes had rolled back, and I wasn't responsive. I was basically just losing consciousness slowly. And what she did, she just hit that red emergency button and grabbed me and took me to the recovery room. And mum and dad were just like, I think, everyone was just in shock at the time. So yeah, that was pretty big for me. Though it was just another moment, another
crisis.
Yeah. And going back to school, it was like my mates were saying, "Oh, what happened?" I'm like, "I died. I came back, and I'm here now. I'm just gone back to playing footy." So it's like that's the normal. It was, because I guess when you're experiencing so many traumatic events at a young age, it's different to compare to, say, like I'm 40 now. If I had those same events now, I don't know how I'd deal with that. Whereas at that age, it was easier. I mean, easy I don't know if that's the right word, because you just,
I guess you sort of saw that it was just like a part of you.
Exactly.
And somehow you are young and you just go with the flow. But didn't you at some point started asking your parents, why me? Because I had those questions for my daughter from about 8, 9, like, why me? Have you ever, even now when you're an adult, and I guess this is where we're talking about in terms of mental health, the fact that you're talking about it, is that acceptance, or have you accepted a while back? I'm just trying to understand like your mental health, where you are at that time and now. Have you ever sat back and just like, why?
I didn't ask my parents why me, I think, growing up, but I wanted to understand what was happening, like why it was the normal, so to speak. So understanding that there were carriers, what sickle cell is, what's the how it's programmed, essentially, how it works. I wanted to understand that. The why me question that you asked, I asked myself that when I was about 20. So 20 years ago, when I was, my hips were diagnosed with AVN, which is vascular necrosis. So bit of a quick backstory. Leading up to that event, I was about 10 or so years old. My parents were told that, look, later on in life, he's going to need his hips replaced because the damage caused by all the constant crises in my hips and lower back and whatnot, the arteries being affected and all that, etc.
Could you just explain for those watching what a vascular necrosis is all about?
So what it is, it's essentially like your bone isn't receiving adequate blood supply. So it's essentially dying. And if you imagine like your hip joint or like your shoulder joint is like a ball and socket kind of a joint. So in my case, my hips were the artery supplying blood to my hips because of the crises which caused blockages leading to like a restricted blood supply to the hips. It basically caused my hips to start dying and decaying and whatnot. So, over time, it comes to a point where they're inoperational. They just don't work. It was just after year 12. I was at home and suddenly I remember I couldn't lift my right leg. I was trying to walk upstairs and I lifted up my leg and I couldn't, my right leg, and it just wouldn't move. Like it just stopped. Like there was some force or something stopping. I'm like, this is weird. There was no pain. It was just weird. And I thought this is really, really, really strange. Had it checked out, had scans galore, X-rays, CTs, you name it. But it wasn't until I had an MRI when that was diagnosed. I was about 20 years old. And when that was diagnosed, I got a run through and of what it entailed, what it means from here onwards, how life's going to be, how it may be, how it might not be, but realistically, this is now another trajectory, another event. And I remember being like in hospital just after being told and everything and finding out about it and whatnot. That's when I asked myself, oh, why me? Like, am I going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life? Am I going to need crutches for the rest of my life? What's going to happen? So as I was mentioning earlier, going through major life events when you're younger has a different impact compared to like when you're in your later teens or your young adulthood or even as an adult. So I think when I look back at it, really, Agnes, I'm grateful that it happened then, because it was 1920. So that's, your life's like started, you get your license, you start driving. Since I could drive, I've been like, I'm fairly independent. I used to drive myself to treatment and back, to hospital and back. And because I saw how much my parents went through, how much they sacrificed, like not just driving, but just everything. And it was sort of uplift for me, empowering to say, you know what, I'm gonna take control of this. I'm gonna own it. Because one, I've seen what my parents have gone through, but two, I want to rise above this. I want to, yes, it's full on, but this is my normal. So let me get on top of it. And it's not a smooth trajectory. It had never been a smooth or easy path, as I'm probably making it sound like to be. No. The amount of challenges and speed bumps and everything, it really was full on. Like when I'm going through it and I'm thinking about, and I had been thinking about like tonight and this session and just getting like an overview, because, when do we actually sit down and go, life's been pretty interesting so far? No, we don't get that time. So I had that opportunity and I wrote down these events that's taken place in my life so far and went, yeah, that's pretty full on. But that moment when I was 20 and when I was diagnosed with AVN, that's when it hit me. That's when I went, okay, I need to crank it up, because this is life-changing, which is ironic because sickle cell itself is life-changing. But to have a part of your body, which is crucial, we need our hips to walk, for that to be non-functional, for that to be decaying, from that moment till about 2000, for about 14 years, that period was probably one of the most challenging. Just because there were multiple surgeries. So I had both of them done on separate occasions, about 7 years apart. And the reason for the delay was because at the time I was 20, my surgeon and the specialist all said, like, you're going to be pretty young for a hip replacement at 20.
I think that's the mistake. I've had a few talks where they say, because those 7 years must have been hard, must have been painful, right?
Yeah.
Very. So I don't get the young part when you're actually in agony almost every day. I just had one of the girls that I know. She's also in her 20s. She has just about 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I had a lady from Zambia. She stayed with the AVN for 19 years.
Oh my goodness.
19 years. And I just can't imagine the pain. Yes. I just can't imagine. And I think this is why, the surgeons and them should be schooled about the pain crisis and just the pain. But then they should know, like, this is born going into the flesh, and I just can't imagine the pain that you had to live with for 7 years.
With pain itself, for example, like everyone's had a headache. We've all experienced headaches, right? Like migraines or headaches, and we know that. But pain in your bone, or like pain with sickle cell, or that physical pain, wouldn't wish it upon anyone. No way. When my hips were like getting to the point, it was just incredible. The amount of pain medication that I was on, you name it, I was on it. Oh man.
And for 7 years. That's just that I can't comprehend in my head. For 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years.
So when did they finally decide? What made them decide that, okay, now it's time, let's have them replaced?
It just wasn't manageable for me. And I think because I'm someone who kind of like, now not so much, but used to really push myself to the nth degree, it was just like, I thought, no, I think enough's enough. I'm done. I can't take this anymore. And that was 2000, the end of 2006, so about 6 years or so. And then signed the papers, all of that. And a few months later, had it in mid-2007. It was just like, pain was this here. So if, when you're in a hospital, you get asked on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your pain? It's like 424, just full on. And you've, on top of that, you got to I've had to have my transfusions, treatment, and all that rest, recover, everything. But just in the last couple of years, so 2005 or 2006, 2007, yeah, and in between, like, somehow I managed to do other things, but it just got to the point where I thought, no, all right, because I think in my mind, I had this fear that if I have this surgery, what does that mean? What's my life going to be like? Am I going to be stuck am I going to be in a wheelchair? I think that was the thing that I just saw myself.
That it might not be successful, and it might not work again. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, wow, okay, well, I have to make some major life decisions. What's going to happen? Am I going to need full-time caring or what? It's, hip replacements usually happen in, when you're a lot later in life. So at 26, 25, 26, 27 years of age, it's like, that's when you're, enjoying life, living life. But for me, I had to think about that and go, okay, if I have it at 26, like, I was trying to think about it scientifically and logically, and go, well, okay, I've got that many years, I can do this much, I've got that much time, I can do here when I'm like 40 or 30. And so there was that kind of planning, but realistically, I think I was just pushing it, or just sort of like waiting until enough was enough. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for my surgeon, because he was it was wonderful. It was the first hip replacement that I had, it was just smooth in the sense that it was full on. Like, I was awake for the entire surgery. So because I couldn't needed to monitor my knee and whatnot, and so I couldn't go under general. I had an epidural.
I lost you just for a bit there. So you couldn't go under general anesthetic because of what?
Just because they wanted to monitor my vitals and keep me alert, not let my BP drop suddenly in the event that I would have a crisis immediately post-op or during or whatnot. So many other complications. So I had to stay awake for it and alert and keep talking to the anesthetists. And
so they just had to do the local anesthetic.
Yeah. So I had an epidural in my back, and from my stomach down, couldn't feel anything. But boy, that was one heck of an experience. I had my...
So you couldn't feel pain at all? Nothing?
not till the end of the surgery. So towards the end, I started feeling a few things, and just alerted them, and they cranked up the anesthetic. But most, for about 95% of it, no, it was just a lot of loud noise and sawing and nailing and jackhammering, and yeah, it's insane.
So that was you had finished high school then. What were you doing then in terms of your life? Were you at uni? Were you working? What were you doing at the time?
So leading up to 2007, leading up to the hip replacement, that time I wasn't working. I finished. I went to TAFE and did multimedia right after year 12. I went to uni, but with the crisis that I had right after year 12, it was full on. So I took time off and I thought, I'm going to focus on this. And this was when I had the AVN diagnosed, and I needed to look at practical things that I could do to sustain myself, but also what was achievable? What could I actually do? Could I be independent? So it was a lot of, the hips were a major life-changing moment, that period of 7 or 8 years. Immediately after my hip replacement, I went to RMIT and did audio engineering. I thought, I'm going to do something that I'm really passionate about, because I love music, I love audio, tech and all of that. And I wanted to do something that I connected with, but that made me feel good, that I loved. And very, very grateful that I got to do that, because there are parts of that I incorporated into my life, and I was heavily involved in music, in recordings, all sorts of things. And I think that was that moment after that first hip replacement, right after I had that, 2008, that's when I went to uni. Yeah, I was 27-ish. It was just, I thought, okay, wow, this was great. I'm doing something I love. I'm passionate about, got a new hip. Okay, so it isn't so bad. And it gave me hope. It changed a lot of things mentally, and it gave me a lot of confidence, hope, and it was empowering to know, oh, wow, okay, I've got this titanium hip that completely beeps like anything at airports, or at the time when you could travel. But it was just really like, oh, all right, I've got a hip. But my goal though was, I want this to work in the sense that I don't want to limp, because I did the amount of research I did, I just read, like, when you're recovering, you're resting, you're in bed, you're bedridden for so long. I was reading up and Googling and whatever information I could find, talking to people who had hip replacements. What was it like? What's life change for you? I wanted to learn and get an understanding from their perspective. Like, how do you sleep? Like, do you, how do you turn around? How do you get in and out of your car? It's, you can't.
So when did you have the second one done?
The second one was when I was 34, so 2014. So 7 years later. There were a few complications with that, because it wasn't the actual entire hip, it was the neck of the femur. So 2 years prior to that, in 2012, I had nails surgically inserted as a temporary solution to try and delay a second hip replacement. Unfortunately, it wasn't as successful. I ended up having a crisis post-op right after that surgery, actually, and it was quite full on, because that hospital I was at, they hadn't treated anyone sickle cell before. So I was transferred to the regular campus, and 2 years later, 2014, had the left one done. So
don't you think, like, in terms of treatment, because I was paranoid. Even now, like, I don't do GPs, I don't do any other hospitals. We prefer to go to the same hospitals, see the same stuff, like, because you just said that you did, at the other hospital. What prompted you? Were you comfortable, or is this just a system that they could do the second one at the other hospital?
It was just a different campus of the same hospital, essentially. So it was just a different campus. And the other aspect was not just the waiting list, but the surgeons themselves, surgeons rather, they were based at the other campus. So I had my reviews done at one campus, but the surgery done at another campus. However, the central one that I used to go to in Clayton, that's where I was basically managed from. So my hematologist.
So that was here. That was still here.
All in Melbourne. This is
I thought that was in Melbourne. So that was here. Okay.
All in Melbourne. Yep. Up till 20.
And was it Professor Bowden then? Your hematologist?
Yeah.
Cool. So now, when did you swap to red cell exchange, or have you ever taken any hydroxyurea when it started in the 90s, or you just?
Not in the 90s. It was the early 2000s actually. In fact, it was around that same time. That's when my red cell exchange treatment started.
Yeah.
At the time, Clayton didn't have the equipment to have red cell exchange. So this was a new program for sickle cell patients. The reason was from 93, 94 onwards, when I was 13, 14, the regular transfusions that I was having, it was working, it was helping, it was incredible, and it was regular. However, the side effect of regular blood transfusion, as some people know, is iron overload. And your ferritin levels, your iron levels skyrocket without proper management. So I was on another drug called desferrioxamine, which I injected into myself daily via a pump, and you basically sleep with it for 10 hours overnight. However, like, my iron levels were very high at that time. So at that point in time, there was no, I think now there are tablets, I think there's just like dissolve, other medications which are like next level from
Jed new now. It was XJed. Other countries they're still calling it XJed, but now I think there's Jed new. Yeah.
Okay. So so my time was just before XJed came onto the market, and Professor Bowden said, okay, there's a program called Red Cell Exchange. It's happening at the Royal Melbourne, and we think this is going to help you. So then suddenly now we're shifting to the Royal Melbourne every month, 3 to 4 weeks. And I was there. So that happened for quite 2000, about 4.
How did life change compared to, the worries of course, with iron overload, you sort of don't feel it, but you know that it's doing some damage. Or did you feel anything as a result of that, of having too much iron?
Tiredness.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because with low iron levels, and I've experienced that as well, there's tiredness, but with iron overload, you're not running around like you've had 400 cups of coffee. It's just a different form of lethargy. Yeah. And just feeling like, something's not right. That feeling tired, feeling not quite yourself. Like it's a different form of lethargy. Just I don't know if the word heavy actually was right, but it was very, very full on. And
so when did you see the effects of the treatment, the iron inhalation? How long did it take for the iron to sort of start being almost the normal levels?
Within the first 12 months, actually.
Okay.
The red cell exchange changed everything, because even with the regular transfusions, the frequency of crises went from 15 to 20 down to 1 to 2 a year. About on average, it was like once or twice a year. And the red cell exchange added to that. In fact, I had at least 1 crisis a year. So they were full on, but it was a massive difference. And that's what the transfusions, especially the red cell exchange transfusions, brought, because the red cell exchange had the added benefit of keeping my ferritin and iron levels like in normal levels. And with standard transfusions, it takes a lot longer, I think, for the body to recover. Whereas with red cell exchange, that recovery period isn't days; it's a day or two. Whereas with in my case anyway, I think it's very everyone has different ways of recovering and whatnot. But in my case, the transfusions took quite took my body quite some time to recover from. Whereas the red cell exchange, after a day or two, it's just jumping. It was like I needed that, and I still do need that day after treatment to just rest, to just recharge, to not do anything, just to recharge. And after that, I'm bouncing. Obviously there are moments where it's sporadic, it's up and down, and if you're fighting like an infection or cold or something like that, or back in the days, then it takes a bit longer for the body to heal. But the red cell exchange program from the early 2000s, that has dramatically changed my life.
So apart from this, so you are on antibiotics daily because of the spleen. Anything else you're taking? Just
so folic acid, and that was the first medication I started having. That's since about 5 or 6 years old. Vitamin D, Hydrea. What else?
So you're on Hydrea too.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I stopped Hydrea. So I started that in 2002, and then stopped that, and then started again when I had a crisis, and then stopped that, and then started again. And the reason for the stop-starts was because I didn't feel great having it. I felt like I was feeling sick. I had issues with my hearing. I felt nauseous and sick. So I stopped and started, stopped and started, stopped and started. So it's never kind of been consistent.
So you are on it now, and are those side effects, have they subsided, or how do you feel now?
I don't feel 100% having it. Like when I had my last crisis and had it, I didn't feel like, I didn't feel great having it, if that makes sense. It's
because the doctors now are saying, you know how before, like for me, my measurements then, and what, apart from, I think my daughter's main issue was she was becoming neutropenic, but also the fetal hemoglobin just couldn't go any further. If anything, started dropping, but mostly because of being neutropenic all the time, so it stopped. But they're saying now in recent years, they've actually seen the benefits rather than just the fetal hemoglobin, the other benefits for Hydrea. That's why they're encouraging people to take it. Yeah. So now I want to ask a personal question with, being genetics and all, in terms of relationships, have you ever had to discuss sickle cell? And if you have, how have you tackled that topic?
Discussed, yes. Relationships, yes. How have I tackled that topic? Just head on. I haven't, in my relationships, I hadn't been quiet about it, I guess, because in those relationships, I'd been pretty open about what I'd been going through, what's involved. And I think it's important for your partner to know that this is what you're going through, because for me, it's not the part of my life, but it's a massive part of my life. Treatments are, like, for me, it's going out for dinner. Like, I have to do that. I want to go out to dinner. I love coffee. I have to have coffee. I have to have coffee, but I have to have treatment. I have to. So in my relationships, it was, at the time anyway, just a part of it. It was accepted. I think it was important to have those talks, because it's very challenging or difficult to be in a relationship where your partner has a chronic medical condition and they're the only ones dealing with it. It's a give and take thing, right? And I remember at one point in time, I had a crisis, and my partner at the time, she was there. And I remember being in an emergency, and the drips had started. I just had my review with the specialist. She was sitting there, she was quiet. And I'm lying there going, I'm in pain, like I'm in a lot of pain, but I'm lying there and I'm looking at her and I'm going, this is like, it's what, like, this is next level. What do I say? Hi, yeah. So this is what a crisis looks like. She knew what sickle cell was all about, but
I'd never seen you in a crisis.
no, that's the thing.
Wow.
Exactly. So, it's one thing to have these discussions, to talk about it, but then when your partner is going through something that's pretty full on, like I can't imagine that. I can't fathom what that would have been like for her. And same with like a few years prior to that, I was given ketamine for a severe crisis, and I had
Ketamine is like very, very strong medication. So that was for pain, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had just like a major crisis, and I remember I had a bit of a reaction to it, but it wasn't great at all. And she was sitting there and tried to like calm me down. I'm trying to stay calm, but
that pain.
It's that pain, but also to see your loved ones suffer. I think like I was trying to see it from her perspective, but I'm like, I just went, yep, this will be over soon. I hope. I think, yeah. 2 hours later, it's it's very confronting, I think.
Yeah.
It's very confronting, and you need to have those talks. There has to be an open channel, not just I believe anyway, I feel, not just with your partner, if you're in a relationship, not just with your partner, but their family as well. If they're in a close-knit family, it's because coming from someone who has sickle cell, this is something I deal with, but it's huge. It's huge. I just don't make it huge. And a lot of people with chronic illnesses don't make it huge. Don't make it like it's all of this. It's just like, this is a part of it. And when there are moments, this is what we go through. This is what happens, what I have to deal with. And it's not every day, or sometimes it is daily, but then it stops and it's fine. It has its moments. However, it's a part of who I am. Yeah, so
I tell you, this is one of the discussions that is just so, it's so inspiring, just like what you're saying right now. I mean, and again, I talk about this from somebody who's like, a caregiver, but I can just, and this is for anything that we go through in life. Like seriously, what you are talking about now is just like something that there's so many things that people go through. It can be chronic illness, it can be mental health issues, it can be anything. And it's just to hear you speak, with pause, and it's just so uplifting and so inspiring. And I'm glad we are doing this, to be honest. I'm glad we are doing this, and I can't wait for you to talk more again and share more at our conference in the next almost 2 months from now, on the 17th and 18th of September. So where is life now? So in the recent years, what are we talking about in terms of crisis? Any at all?
My last crisis was November 2019. So during all of 2020, and that was the first year of my life that I was crisis free, like completely crisis free.
When did you move to the Gold Coast? Because you moved there for the weather, right?
Moved up for the weather in 2018. Backtracking a bit, I met someone who lives in Brisbane and moved up because she and her family are here. And growing up, I'd always tell my parents, I'm like, I'm moving to Queensland. I'm moving up. Melbourne's too cold. I love Melbourne, love life on street, but sorry, too cold. Can't deal. And it just happened where I met this person, and we were in a relationship, and that gave me a reason to go, okay, you know what, I'm going to move up. Moved up in early 2018 and settled here in Queensland, and have been here since. I did live in northern New South Wales to be closer to work for about 18 months, but then now I'm in Gold Coast, and I made this move to the Gold Coast because I felt that it was more important to be closer to GCUH, where I had my treatment, as opposed to being closer to work. Yeah, so
I love the Gold Coast. I love the Gold Coast. I love the weather, but I'm scared of Queensland because of the cyclones. I mean, I love the warm weather, but you don't have cyclones and them in Gold Coast, do you?
I haven't experienced a cyclone yet, but the storms are insane. And I love storms, that the electricity. I get out my portable recorder and I just record them.
Really? Oh my God, I'll go under the bed.
Because
scared of lightning.
I love it. And if I'm not videoing, I'll record it on audio, because that sound, like I'll play it back and listen to it, enhance it a bit, edit and whatnot. But it's, the sounds of nature. When you're in a rainforest or something, that's therapeutic, and I love audio. So that's what I do. So I'm kind of glad I'm in Queensland.
Next time I come up, I'll come and see you. Wow, this, oh my God, it's over an hour already. But it's just so inspiring, so inspiring. Tell me more, like what message, what you've said, like just summing it up in a few words to all the sickle cell warriors right now, battling sickle cell disease anywhere in the world. Some of them are watching. What message do you have for them?
Agnes, I've been, for quite some time, I wasn't on Facebook, like for about a year or a couple of years. And I just used that time to go within my shell, to strengthen myself. And when I came back on a few years ago, I started following posts of people who are posting their challenges when they're having a crisis, they're in hospital, they're dealing with so much. And just that connection, that understanding, that knowing, going, oh my goodness, I know exactly what you're going through. I've been there. I've done that. I've been in that moment. I know what you're going through. It really made me think about a lot of stuff. So if anyone right now, if you're watching or listening or whatnot, and we're all at different stages, and with sickle cell, it's not a one size fits all thing. However, the challenges that you go through, the challenges that we go through are the same. We're still asking the same questions. We're still going through the same things. However, I think it's very, very important to just know that you are so powerful. You are so strong. You have the power within you to rise above it, and to not just shine at the end of it, but to literally change your life. What you're going through, it's not the thing that defines your life. What you're going through is actually equipping you and making you stronger, so that later on, when you're out of the hospital, when you're standing or you're sitting or you're anything, just know that your life's about to begin. It's not in a hospital ward. It's not in a hospital bed. It's not in a clinic. It's where you want to be. So you're like, this is it. This is my life. It says drips and painkillers and medications and pain, surgeries, crises, all of that. Nah, that's that much. It's a tiny, tiny bit of what you're actually capable of. I know if I can actually sit here and share this, whoever's watching this, you're capable of so, so much more. Don't discount yourself. Don't let anyone ever define you that, hey, you're this person and you have sickle cell. Yes, you are this person and you do have sickle cell, but own it. That's not you. That's not your entire you. It's just a part of you. Your life is massive. So own it, take ownership, take control of it, because, you know, you are powerful. That's it.
Wow, Shane, that's just powerful. You are powerful, Shane. You are powerful. Seriously, I feel like, you know, do this for something, like go out there, you know, do a TED talk or something. Just go out there and share. And seriously, I do feel you have a lot to just offer to inspire people, not just people living with sickle cell disease, any chronic condition. Thank you so much for doing this. And you know, it had to be at whatever point God allowed. We've been having, you know, discussions, and I'm glad that you are full on now in Queensland. You know, you guys can grow. The team is growing in Queensland. Hopefully, post all this COVID, we can come and do that face to face, where you can stand up and just, you know, speak to people there to know and inspire them and know that they are not alone and they should own it. And it's just that tiny little bit. There's so much more to people living with sickle cell disease, and we are changing the narratives. You know, we'll continue talking. Thank you so much. If there's anything, any shout out, anything you want to say, please go for it.
No, I just wanted to express my gratitude to you and to Aska. I do have to say that I think starting an association like this for, you know, there are not many people in Australia with sickle cell, just even around the world, but just the fact that there's an association around, there's things happening. Like I posted on Facebook recently about the monuments in all the capital cities, almost all the capital cities being lit in red. And that was just a huge moment, because that acknowledgement, that in that image, and I posted, I had to see it with my own eyes. I didn't just want to see it on my phone. I wanted to be there, and I needed to see it because, you know, 4 decades of something, it's like it's a part of you. But then to go, oh wow, the entire city is lit up with a few buildings in red. It's not just that.
Tell me about it. Like I was when I saw that road, like this is a huge company, like huge government departments, to pause for one day. And some of them actually, I just have to check, some of them started on the 18th up to the 20th. Wow. To actually pause for that 24 hours, 48 hours, to just say, this, we owe it to people. I was emotional, I tell you. I looked at that and I was like, you know, look at the observation wheel in Docklands, here in Melbourne. That whole wheel was in red for, you know, the night of the 19th. Like, seriously, I just felt, you know, I'm so glad that I'm part of this. I'm part of this, and we can do this together. And you know, it's time, and we'll keep fighting. We'll keep fighting until we see that, you know, hopefully one day we don't even have to ask, otherwise there'll be a cure for, you know, sickle cell disease. But with all the challenges that we have in Australia, we need to make sure that all other drugs are here. We have issues. Actually, I'll be posting something out tomorrow. I'm home at least. We want to hear feedback from people taking hydroxyurea. The government has opened a door for us. They want to hear the issues that we have with hydroxyurea. So that's another step, you know.
Yeah.
That's another step, because hydroxyurea is a repurposed medication, meaning it's been used for sickle cell disease, when essentially here in Australia it's not registered for sickle cell disease. They're just reusing for sickle cell, if that makes it easy. So the government has opened the Department of Health of Australia. They want to just see the issues, and I've said any feedback, if you've got any feedback, Shane, email, and I'll just forward to the Department of Health. I'll be posting now. It's just been busy. It's been, I think, 2 weeks since they asked us to take part in the study. So those are the issues that we are looking out for in Australia, to see that all the medications that are available in other parts of the world are here. But also that, you know, in terms of research, we have scientists who will be presenting at the conference. If they can do their part, and who knows, Australia is known for finding vaccines and the medications. A cure can come from Australia. But I just want to thank you so much for being part of this journey. And I can't wait to meet you face to face post-COVID. I've been to Gold Coast several times, but I think at that time you are still here, I guess. Yeah.
One day it'll happen. Like, there will be many windows.
Many windows.
It'll happen. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to September. That's gonna be massive.
Yeah. September, like, you have so many responsibilities. I'm moderator, you are sharing, you are doing so many. Actually, I'll add you on the admin. I'll tell you afterwards. I'll add you on the admin thing we are doing, so that you can work with the IT team there. But thank you so much, Shane, for doing this. Please think about what I've told you. You are a very nice, compelling speaker who can, you know, just stand there and people be just like quiet listening to you speaking for hours and hours. Seriously, do a TED Talk. Something like that. Inspire the masses. Thank you so much. I'll go and have my dinner now. I was rushing. I needed to come and do this. I was so looking forward to this. I went to Geelong all the way, but I'm back just on time. So thank you so much. I shall see you soon. We'll talk online.
We'll talk soon. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Agnes, and thank you everyone who's listening and whatnot. Really, much gratitude, and stay safe. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Facebook family. We'll see you tomorrow. We've got self-care, so you can join in. I've got Melissa Jenkins. We are talking about self-care. That's something that I'm doing deliberately. I'm on day 9 today. Deliberate moves to self-care. I've just been so busy the past year, and I've seen the effects. And as you've said, the body just tells you that something is not right. So I took a 28-day challenge just to eat right, to sleep, to exercise when I can. Nice. I'm still working, but I just have to be conscious to do some of these things. So tomorrow, Melissa is one of the teams that I've met online on LinkedIn, and we are coming to talk about self-care tomorrow. So thank you so much, Facebook family. Shane, again, we'll talk soon. You have a nice evening.
Thank you, Agnes. You too. Take care.